Billie Jo Margaret Jenkins was born on the 29th of March, 1983 in East London, England. She was the daughter of Deborah Barnett and William Jenkins, but her early life was marked by significant challenges due to her family's circumstances. By the time of her tragic death, Billie Jo was just 13 years old, having been murdered on the 15th of February 1997 in Hastings, East Sussex. At that point, she had been living in Hastings for several years after being placed in foster care. Billie Jo attended Helenswood School, a local secondary school for girls in the area, where she was known among her peers and teachers. She had expressed aspirations to pursue a career in acting, showing a creative and ambitious side despite her difficult background. Friends and family described her as a fun-loving child who enjoyed typical teenage activities, such as listening to music and spending time with schoolmates. Her life in Hastings appeared outwardly stable, but underlying issues would later come to light in the investigation following her death. The murder took place in the back garden of her foster family's home, turning what should have been a safe environment into the scene of a horrific crime. This case drew widespread attention due to its brutality and the questions it raised about family dynamics and safety. Billie Jo's move to Hastings came as part of her foster placement, which aimed to provide her with a more supportive home. Prior to this, her biological family faced severe hardships. Her father, William Jenkins, was imprisoned for assault, and her mother, Deborah, struggled with substance abuse issues, making it impossible for her to provide adequate care. Welcome, my friends. I'm so glad to have you here as part of this YouTube family. Before we dive into today's story, let me ask, what city are you watching from, and how's the weather there right now? And remember, I read all your comments, so don't be shy. Share your thoughts below, hit the like button, and subscribe so you never miss a case. Social services intervened when Billie Jo was around 9 years old, leading to her placement with a foster family in 1992. This relocation from East London to the coastal town of Hastings marked a significant change in her life, offering what was intended to be a fresh start. In school, Billie Jo was remembered as polite and engaging, with a particular interest in drama that fueled her dreams of becoming an actor. She participated in school activities and maintained friendships, often confiding in classmates about her daily experiences. Her age of 13 placed her at a vulnerable stage of adolescence, where she was navigating the complexities of family life, school, and personal growth. The year 1997, when the crime occurred, was a period of relative normalcy for her until that fateful February day. Billie Jo's personal life was shaped by her troubled family background, which necessitated her entry into the foster care system. At the age of 9, she was placed with foster parents Sion and Lois Jenkins, who coincidentally shared her surname, Jenkins. This placement was arranged through social services, and Billie Jo moved in with the family in East London initially before they relocated to Hastings. The Jenkins family included 4 foster sisters, Annie, Lottie, Maya, and Esther, all biological daughters of Sion and Lois. Over the 5 years she lived with them, Billie Jo integrated into the family structure, participating in daily routines and household activities. She was described by those who knew her as hard-working and well-mannered, often helping around the house to earn pocket money, such as through chores like painting or cleaning. Despite the challenges of her past, Billie Jo maintained some ongoing contact with her birth parents. She occasionally visited her biological mother and had limited interactions with her father upon his release from prison. This connection to her origins added layers to her emotional world, as she balanced loyalty to her birth family with adaptation to her foster home. In the Jenkins household, she shared a bedroom with one of her foster sisters and engaged in family outings, holidays, and meals. Lois Jenkins, a social worker by profession, provided a nurturing presence, while Sion, employed in education, was seen as the disciplinarian. Billie Jo's personality shone through in her interactions. She was polite, eager to please, and showed resilience in adjusting to her new life. School reports and friend accounts highlighted her good manners and willingness to contribute positively. However, beneath this surface, there were signs of strain that would later be scrutinized. Her integration was not without difficulties, as the family dynamics included strict rules and expectations. Overall, Billie Joe's personal life reflected a young girl trying to build stability amid past traumas, with the foster family offering structure but not always harmony. Several reports from school friends, family members, and witnesses pointed to conflicts and potential warning signs in Billie Joe's relationship with her foster father, Joe Jenkins. These accounts emerged during the police investigation and trials, revealing a pattern of alleged violence and tension. School friends of Billie Joe stated that she had confided in them about incidents where Sion had been physically aggressive. For instance, she reportedly told friends that he had punched her, scratched her neck, and kicked her. On one occasion, Billie Joe arrived at school with blood on her face, which she attributed to an argument involving her pet dog. Bruises on her arms and legs were also noticed by peers, who linked them to disputes at home. In a particularly telling expression of her feelings, Billie Joe once wrote "hate" on her knuckles, and the phrase "I hate my dad, Sion" on a piece of paper, indicating deep resentment. Joe Jenkins himself admitted to using corporal punishment on the children, including slapping Billie Joe in moments of anger and occasionally hitting them with a slipper or ruler as discipline. Family friends corroborated some of these issues, recalling an incident during a holiday in France in August 1996, where Sion aggressively kicked Billie Joe in the ankle, even though she had a sprained ankle at the time. Lois Jenkins described Sion's temper as vein-popping when he lost control, particularly with Billie Joe, suggesting episodes of intense anger. These descriptions painted a picture of a household where discipline could escalate into physical confrontations. While not all family members reported witnessing severe abuse, the cumulative accounts from multiple sources highlighted warning signs of domestic strain. Billie Joe's foster sisters, such as Annie and Lottie, were sometimes present during family interactions, but their perspectives varied in later statements. These conflicts were not isolated. They formed a backdrop of unease that investigators later explored as potential motives or indicators of dysfunction. Importantly, these reports were based on witness testimonies and were subject to scrutiny in court, but they underscored the challenges Billie Joe faced in her foster home environment. The context of time and place played a crucial role in setting the scene for Billie Joe Jenkins' life and eventual murder. Hastings, located in East Sussex on England's south coast, was a former seaside resort town that had fallen into decline by the 1990s. Once a popular Victorian-era destination known for its beaches, piers, and tourism, the town faced economic hardships during this decade. Unemployment rates were higher than average, influenced by the decline in traditional industries like fishing and tourism. Areas of Hastings showed signs of urban decay, with drug issues prevalent in certain neighborhoods and abandoned properties dotting the landscape. But the 1990s marked a period of transition and struggle for many families. The Jenkins family had moved from East London to Hastings in search of a better quality of life, settling into a 3-story Victorian house on Lower Park Road. This home, typical of the area's architecture, featured a back garden where the crime would later occur. The move allowed Joe Jenkins to take up his position as deputy head teacher at William Parker School, a boys' comprehensive school in the town. However, it was later revealed that Sion had falsified his qualifications to secure this role. He claimed to have obtained 10 O-levels in 1973, but records showed he actually passed only 3 at grade C in art, English, and history, with lower grades in other subjects like arithmetic, French, and physics. Additionally, he misrepresented his teaching qualification as being in English with drama, when it was actually in physical education, and claimed attendance at the University of London instead of the University of East London. These discrepancies came to light during the investigation, damaging his credibility. Sion was also involved in local politics, standing as a Conservative Party candidate in elections, which positioned him as a community figure. The family installed security measures like lights and window locks due to concerns about prowlers and break-ins in the area, reflecting broader safety worries in 1990s Hastings. The events leading to the murder of Billie Joe Jenkins unfolded on the 15th of February 1997, a Saturday, in the family's home on Lower Park Road in Hastings. That morning, the household followed a typical routine for the Jenkins family. Lois Jenkins, the foster mother, took 2 of her biological daughters, Maya and Esther, out shopping in the town center. Meanwhile, Joe Jenkins, the foster father, accompanied his other two daughters, Annie, aged 12, and Lottie, aged 10, to a clarinet lesson earlier in the day. Billie Jo, who was 13, decided to stay behind at the house alone to complete a chore that would earn her some pocket money. She had agreed to paint the patio doors in the rear garden, a task that involved using white spirit and brushes provided by the family. The weather that day was mild for February, allowing outdoor work, but the garden was enclosed with access points that later became points of interest in the investigation. Prior to the afternoon events, one of the children had left an 18-inch iron tent peg on the patio, an item from the family's camping equipment. Additionally, plastic bin liners and a bucket of water had been placed outside, originally used by the daughters to clean the family car. These items would later prove significant. Joe, Annie, and Lottie returned home around 3 p.m. after the clarinet lesson and a visit to a local DIY store called Parkstone to purchase white spirit for the painting job. Upon arriving, Joe entered the house briefly and spoke to Billie Jo, who was listening to music while working. He reportedly asked her to turn down the volume of her music, leading to a brief exchange that some accounts described as an argument, though details varied in witness statements. Joe then left again with Annie and Lottie for what he claimed was a quick errand to another DIY store, Do It All, to exchange or buy more supplies despite having just visited Parkstone. During this short absence, estimated at about 10 minutes, the attack occurred. Billie Jo was bludgeoned 5 times on the head with the iron tent peg while she was on the patio. The blows were delivered with significant force, causing severe skull fractures and brain injuries. Pathological examination later confirmed that death resulted from these injuries within minutes. With no evidence of defensive wounds or a prolonged struggle, the timeline placed the assault in a narrow window when Joe was supposedly away, but his route to the store was unusual. He drove in circles around a nearby park, which police interpreted as a possible attempt to establish an alibi. This day, which started ordinarily, escalated into tragedy, highlighting the sudden shift from routine family activities to a crime scene. Joe Jenkins discovered Billie Jo's body upon returning from the errand to the Do-It-All store with Annie and Lottie. He entered the rear garden through the house and found her lying face down in a pool of blood on the patio, near the doors she had been painting. The girls remained in the car at the front of the house during this time. Instead of immediately calling emergency services, Joe delayed, first closing the roof on his convertible car, which was parked outside. He then went inside the house again before finally dialing 999, but only after being prompted by a neighbor who had heard the commotion and come to assist. During the emergency call, the operator instructed Joe to check if Billie Jo was breathing and to place her in the recovery position, but he refused, stating, "I don't know, I haven't looked." He also failed to perform any first aid, such as attempting to stem the bleeding or assess her condition. Initially, in his statements to police, Joe falsely claimed he had not been home at the time of the murder, asserting he was out during the critical period. However, he later retracted this, admitting he had been at the house that afternoon, a change prompted by inconsistencies with his daughter's accounts. Minutes after the discovery, a colleague from Joe's school arrived at the door for a visit, and Joe answered without mentioning the incident unfolding in the garden, adding to the odd behavior noted by investigators. The neighbor who prompted the call attempted to help by entering the garden, but Billie Jo was already unresponsive. Police arrived at the scene shortly after the 999 call, led by Detective Superintendent Jeremy Payne of Sussex Police. The response was swift, with officers securing the area and beginning an immediate examination. Forensic teams were called in to process the site, revealing no signs of forced entry into the property or the garden, which suggested the perpetrator might have been known to the victim or had easy access. There was also no evidence of sexual assault, ruling out certain motives early on. The cause of death was determined through a post-mortem examination as severe head injuries from blunt force trauma, with the victim dying within minutes due to massive blood loss and brain damage. Key evidence collected included the 18-inch iron tent peg, identified as the murder weapon, which was found bloodied near the body. Other items gathered were the paint pot and brush Billie Jo had been using, a piece of plastic bin liner that was inexplicably lodged in her nose, possibly inserted post-attack, and a bucket of water that appeared to have been moved to the patio, potentially for cleanup purposes. Clothing from family members was seized for analysis, leading to the discovery of 158 microscopic blood spots on Sion's fleece jacket and trousers. Forensic experts classified these as impact spatter, consistent with being present during the assault, rather than from later contact with the body. No similar spatter was found on the clothing of paramedics or the neighbor who assisted. Police interviewed family members on site, noting discrepancies in Sion's timeline. By 24th of February 1997, Sion was arrested on suspicion of murder, and he was formally charged on the 14th of March 1997. Initial efforts also involved house-to-house inquiries and appeals for witnesses. The crime scene was located in the back garden of the three-story Victorian house, as mentioned previously in the case background. Billie Joe's body was positioned face down on the patio, close to the French doors she had been painting, with her head turned slightly to one side. A large pool of blood surrounded her, indicating the attack happened where she fell, with no drag marks suggesting movement post-assault. The garden was enclosed by fences and a side gate, showing no signs of stranger intrusion, such as footprints, broken locks, or disturbed vegetation. The tent peg lay nearby, covered in blood, and the paint materials were scattered, consistent with an interrupted task. The bucket of water, possibly relocated from elsewhere in the garden, contained traces of blood, raising questions about attempts to wash evidence. Overall, the scene pointed to a sudden, violent attack in a domestic setting without external disruption. The immediate aftermath brought shock and grief to the family. Lois Jenkins and the daughters, upon returning from shopping, were devastated, with Lois expressing disbelief and the girls showing signs of trauma. Family reactions included public appeals initially led by Sion, but suspicion quickly shifted to him due to his erratic behavior and the blood evidence on his clothing. Media coverage exploded, turning the case into a high-profile story across UK newspapers and television, with headlines focusing on the brutality against a foster child. The Hastings community responded with vigils, searches, and tips about a possible prowler, a scar-faced man in his 40s carrying a plastic bag, reportedly seen near the house in prior weeks. Police followed leads, arresting two men, one mentally ill individual who matched the prowler description and another suspect, but both were released due to alibis and lack of evidence. As forensic results implicated Sion, particularly the blood spots, police focus intensified on him, leading to his arrest. The family home became a focal point for ongoing investigations, with Lois and the daughters relocating temporarily amid the scrutiny. This period marked the transition from a community-wide hunt for an intruder to a domestic suspect, setting the stage for the legal proceedings that followed. After the first conviction in 1998, the case entered a long and difficult phase. The conviction of Sion Jenkins was later questioned during appeals. Judges raised doubts about the evidence, especially the blood spatter. Experts could not agree if the blood was from impact during the attack or from Billie Joe breathing out blood as Sion stood nearby. This uncertainty weakened the case. Without DNA or other strong forensic evidence to link someone else, the investigation had no clear direction. But believe me, this was only the start of the problems. Other suspects had been suggested, like a man described as a prowler seen around the house. He was in his 40s or 50s, and was even said to have followed Billie Joe. There were also reports of silent phone calls and a strange man seen in the garden. Guess what? None of these led to charges. There was no solid proof against any of them. One mentally ill man was arrested because he looked like the prowler, but he had a clear alibi. That meant police had no other suspect to pursue. Sion remained the main focus, but after his acquittal, he could not be tried again. With no one else to charge, the case started to grow cold. Here's the interesting part. From the start, investigators faced many challenges. Sion's story about driving in circles around the park raised suspicion. His false claims about his job qualifications also made him look less trustworthy. The blood evidence was the biggest issue. Was it spatter from the attack, or was it simply caused by him being close to Billie Joe as she died? The lack of agreement among experts created a gap in the case. After 2006, the case fell into silence. It was not fully closed, but there was no progress. Sussex police reviewed it from time to time, sometimes every 2 years, but nothing new appeared. The Criminal Cases Review Commission had already looked into it between 2001 and 2003. Their work helped open the door for the appeal, but did not answer the main question: who killed Billy Joe? For years, there were calls for the case to be reopened. Some of Billy Joe's relatives asked for justice, but no breakthrough came. The trail went cold, leaving one of the most troubling child murders in Britain unsolved. The turning point in the Billy Joe Jenkins case came in 2003. The Criminal Cases Review Commission, known as the CCRC, completed a 2-year review. Their decision was to refer the case back to the Court of Appeal. But believe me, this was no small step. It came after new doubts were raised about the blood evidence that had helped convict Sion Jenkins in 1998. At the original trial, experts said the tiny blood spots on Sion's clothing were impact spatter from the blows. That meant he had to be the killer. But new scientific opinions argued something different. Some experts believed the blood could have been caused by lung gases or from airway blockage, as Billy Joe struggled to breathe. In this view, the blood could have been sprayed when someone came close to her body, not when she was attacked. Guess what? This meant the strongest link tying him to the murder might not have been so certain after all. The referral by the CCRC opened the door to new investigations. Police and lawyers went back to witnesses, including Annie and Lottie, Sion's 2 daughters who were with him that day. Their re-interviews gave weight to his account of leaving the house and returning minutes later. Their statements supported his timeline, at least in part, and raised questions about whether he had time to commit the crime. Other undisclosed witness statements were also examined, giving a fuller picture than the jury had seen at the first trial. Here's the interesting part. The forensic testimony from the first trial was also challenged. Dr. Ian Hill, one of the original experts, had claimed the blood spots could only be explained as impact spatter, but further testing showed another possible explanation. Defense experts carried out experiments that proved blood could travel in tiny droplets through exhalation when a person's airway is blocked. Pathologists later discovered Billy Joe had plastic in her nose, which could have caused just that kind of blockage. This discovery struck at the heart of the original case. During the retrials, even more evidence was discussed. There was talk about bone, flesh, and even metal fragments in the bloodstains. But the court decided this material could not be admitted as evidence, leaving the focus on the main question: how the blood got onto Sion's clothes. Without certainty, the case against him grew weaker. The breakthrough was not about proving someone else guilty. It was about showing that the case against Sion was not strong enough. But inconsistencies still followed him. His timeline sometimes shifted in the details, and his later claims about a prowler raised new debate. In his 2009 book, The Murder of Billy Joe, he described a strange man near the house and suggested this was the real killer. Police, however, rejected this idea, saying they had never found evidence of such a man. There were also disputes about his claims of being forced to sign statements without reading them. Investigators said this was not true, and some family members noted that his daughter's stories had changed over time. Still, the legal system now accepted there was no safe basis to keep him convicted. By 2006, after 2 retrials and the review by the CCRC, the jury could not agree. Sion was formally acquitted. The conviction that once seemed solid had been overturned, leaving the murder unsolved. This was the breakthrough, not a step toward justice for Billy Joe, but a reminder of how fragile evidence can be. The case was no longer closed, yet no one else was charged. The truth about what happened that February day in 1997 remained out of reach. The legal battle in the case of Billy Joe Jenkins reached its end on the 9th of February 2006. After 2 retrials that ended with hung juries, the court decided there would be no further trials. Sion Jenkins was formally acquitted. He walked free, and no sentence was given. The verdict did not say he was innocent. It said the evidence was not strong enough to prove guilt beyond doubt. The role of the evidence was central. At the first trial, the blood spatter had been the main reason for conviction. Years later, new interpretations showed it could have been caused by breathing, not impact. This raised too much doubt. Other evidence, like claims of bone and metal fragments in the stains, was never accepted by the court. Without that, the case collapsed. But believe me, the defense faced many challenges along the way. They had to fight over the reliability of forensic science. They had to explain why tiny blood drops could be on his clothes without him striking the blows. At the same time, they decided not to fully pursue theories about a prowler in the early years, focusing instead on science and timelines. Later, Jenkins himself spoke more about the idea of an intruder. Guess what? Police rejected that theory, saying there was no evidence. The aftermath of the acquittal showed how divided people remained. Jenkins remarried, moved to Hampshire, and began studying criminology. In the book he wrote, he claimed innocence and pointed to failures in the investigation. In 2010, his application for compensation for wrongful conviction was denied. Officials ruled that although his conviction was overturned, the evidence did not prove he was innocent. Billy Joe's family did not accept his version of events. Many of them still believed he was guilty. Her foster mother and sisters carried the weight of loss without justice. The biological family also struggled with the lack of closure. Appeals for truth and justice continued, but no new suspect was ever brought forward. Here's the interesting part. The case highlighted how much trials can depend on forensic science. Tiny blood spots became the center of years of legal battles. The Criminal Cases Review Commission played a vital role by reviewing the conviction and referring it back to the courts. Without them, the retrials might never have happened. Forensic reviews carried out even in later years, like one by Sussex Police in 2022, found no new leads. That shows both the importance and the limits of science in old cases. The impact of the case was wider than one family. It raised public questions about whether the justice system could always be trusted. Media attention was huge, covering every detail of the arrest, trials, and acquittal. The public was left with the image of a young girl murdered at home, and no one punished. For Billy Joe's family, closure never came. For society, the case became a lesson in how evidence can be challenged, convictions overturned, and yet the truth still remain hidden. The murder of Billy Joe Jenkins stands as both a personal tragedy and a reminder of the limits of justice when a crime remains unsolved.
The day was July 6, 1983. The sun beat down mercilessly over Cocoa Beach, Florida, on what was one of the hottest afternoons of the summer. A young woman stepped out of a car in the parking lot of the Glass Bank building. Moments earlier, she had walked away from an argument with a friend. What no one could have known at the time was that this moment marked the beginning of a mystery that would haunt investigators, family, and the true crime world for decades. That young woman was 18-year-old Tammy Lynn Leopard, a rising star in modeling, acting, and beauty pageants. Her future seemed bound for greatness. But that day, Tammy took a step into the unknown, vanishing into one of the most chilling and unsolved mysteries in American crime. This was not a routine missing person case. What happened to Tammy came after a year of spiraling paranoia, panic attacks, and repeated warnings that her life was in imminent danger. Her disappearance is not just about a search for a missing girl. It is a story tangled in Hollywood glamour, dark secrets, and a psychological unraveling that ended in a tragedy both baffling and heartbreaking. Tammy Lynn Leopard was born on February 5, 1965, in Rockledge, Florida. From the very beginning, her path seemed preordained. Her mother, Linda Curtis, was a theatrical agent with big ambitions, and she channeled those dreams into her daughter, who possessed striking beauty even as a child. By the age of 4, Tammy was already competing in beauty pageants, stepping on stages where her appearance and poise were constantly judged. The numbers that followed were nothing short of astounding. By 16, Tammy had competed in nearly 300 pageants, winning 280 of them. That kind of record wasn't just success, it was domination. Her combination of angelic looks and natural confidence captivated judges and audiences alike. But her character shone beyond the crowns. At one children's pageant, the wrong girl was mistakenly announced as the winner. When officials realized their error and tried to correct it, Tammy refused to take the crown. She insisted the other girl keep it, saying it was the only fair thing to do. That single act revealed more about Tammy's kindness and integrity than any title ever could. Home life, however, wasn't perfect. When Tammy was 7, her parents divorced. She and her mother grew into a close unit, supporting one another through the changes. Linda continued managing clients, including an 11-year-old boy named Wing Flanagan. Before long, Wing moved in with them, and he and Tammy formed a bond that was like brother and sister. He would later recall that Tammy gave him a kiss on the cheek every morning before he left, leaving behind a lipstick mark he first found embarrassing, but later wore proudly. My YouTube family, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what the weather is like right now. Drop it in the comments. I always enjoy reading them. And don't forget to share this story so more people can join the conversation. While dominating the pageant world, Tammy's modeling career began to rise. In October 1978, at only 13, she appeared on the cover of CoverGirl magazine, a major milestone for any aspiring model. But her true passion was acting. Tammy loved the art of becoming someone else, which she described as play and pretend. She didn't just chase fame, she genuinely loved the craft. That passion soon became reality. She landed small background roles in Little Darlings, 1980, and later in the teen comedy Spring Break, 1983. Though her role in Spring Break was minor, simply appearing as the girl in the boxing ring, her striking presence earned her a spot on the film's official poster. It was a huge step forward, and it seemed like Tammy's Hollywood dream was well within reach. But it was after the filming of that seemingly lighthearted movie that darkness began to overtake her life. In July 1982, the crew celebrated the end of filming with a massive wrap party, not just an evening, but an entire weekend of indulgence. Tammy, then 17, attended alone. What transpired at that party remains the heart of this mystery, because whatever she saw, or whatever happened, marked the moment Tammy's life began an irreversible spiral into fear. When she returned home, her mother and Wing barely recognized her. The vibrant, cheerful girl they knew had been replaced by someone withdrawn, quiet, and terrified. Wing recalled asking what had happened, but Tammy avoided the question, deflecting with jokes or silence. Yet her demeanor betrayed her. Something was terribly wrong. Soon, her behavior grew more alarming. She appeared paranoid, often standing at windows for hours, watching cars as if expecting someone to arrive. One day, she pointed out a neighbor's new van with mirrored windows, whispering to Wing that people could see inside their home from it while they remained hidden. Her fears escalated. She refused to eat unless she saw the food being prepared, and wouldn't drink from any can or bottle unless she opened it herself. She became suspicious of phone calls, forcing her mother or Wing to answer. If the call was for her, she would insist they tell the caller she wasn't home. Linda was desperate. Watching her daughter unravel, she tried to find answers. Finally, Tammy confided in her, just a little. She asked, "Mom, what would you say if I told you someone is trying to kill me?" Startled, Linda asked if she was serious. Tammy said yes. At the wrap party, she explained, she had witnessed something she should not have seen. Because of that, her life was now in danger. But Tammy refused to reveal what it was. She said she was too afraid to speak. The year that followed was a torment for the family. They lived with Tammy's constant fear, unsure if the threat was real or imagined. Even so, Tammy continued to pursue her dream. Early in 1983, she landed a small but significant role in Brian De Palma's Scarface, starring Al Pacino. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, the kind of role that could launch a career. Her scenes were filmed in Miami, where she stayed with a family friend, attorney Walter Leibovitz. For the first few days, Tammy seemed to regain some composure. She played a girl used as a distraction during the infamous chainsaw scene and impressed the crew with her looks. For a brief moment, it appeared the work was helping her push aside her fear. But on the fourth day, everything collapsed. During the filming of a gunfight scene, Tammy saw squibs erupt with fake blood, simulating gunshot wounds. She suffered a total breakdown, screaming, shaking, and inconsolable. The casting director immediately called Walter Leibovitz, urging him to come at once. By the time he arrived, Tammy was hysterical, sobbing uncontrollably and rambling that she was going to be killed, that there was no place she could hide. And then, in her panic, she mentioned something chilling, money laundering. It was the first and only time she linked her fear to a specific crime. Walter, a calm and rational man, was deeply concerned. He contacted Linda and gave 2 urgent recommendations: get Tammy evaluated by a doctor or psychiatrist and report her fears to the police. He believed Tammy's terror was real, not imagined. Tammy left Scarface, abandoning what could have been her big break. She returned home, sinking deeper into despair. Linda followed Walter's advice and took Tammy to the Brevard County Sheriff's Office. But at the station, Tammy refused to speak. She didn't voice her fears or mention danger, remaining silent as though afraid even the police might be part of what threatened her. At home, her paranoia worsened. She would only eat food from others' plates after they had already started, convinced her own portion was poisoned. She isolated herself, spending hours alone in her room. On July 1st, 1983, just days before she disappeared, Tammy's instability reached its peak. Wing was reading when Tammy suddenly accused him of staring at her. Enraged, she ran outside. A gust of wind slammed the door shut behind her, locking her out. Already on edge, Tammy panicked, pounding on the door and screaming. Then she spotted a baseball bat in the yard. In a fit of rage, she smashed the windows before Wing managed to unlock the door. But when he let her in, she attacked him, knocking him down and striking him while screaming that he had locked her out on purpose. Linda rushed in to find her daughter in a violent frenzy against the boy who was like a brother. She repeated, "Tammy, it's Mom. I love you," until Tammy calmed down. For Linda, it was the breaking point. She took Tammy to a local mental health center for evaluation. Tammy was held under observation for 72 hours. Drug and alcohol tests were negative. During her stay, she showed no aggression or psychosis, appearing calm and composed. With no grounds for involuntary commitment, doctors discharged her without diagnosis or treatment. The system had failed. As Linda picked her up, Tammy uttered chilling words. "He's still hunting me. He'll probably kill me soon. And when it happens, Mom, make him pay for what he did." Again, she refused to name the man she feared. The following days felt like final farewells. On July 5th, Tammy called her friend Rick Adams, asking to go to church and pray. There, she wept uncontrollably, again saying she had seen something terrible and feared she would be killed. She told Rick she loved him, then cryptically added, "I might have to go away for a while." Rick assumed she meant moving to Hollywood, unaware of the deeper meaning. The next morning, July 6th, Tammy behaved unusually normal. Linda suspected it was an act, a mask of calm. Around 11 a.m., Tammy left with an acquaintance, Keith Roberts, who was supposed to drive her to Cocoa Beach. Linda later claimed Tammy had expressed fear of Keith, even naming him as someone who might harm her. Why she willingly got into his car remains unanswered. As she left, Tammy's last words to her mother were, "Bye, Mommy. I'll see you soon." According to Keith, they argued during the drive. Tammy demanded he take her to Fort Lauderdale. When he refused, she insisted he drop her off. He left her in the parking lot of the Glass Bank building. What happened next is known only through fragments. Tammy used a pay phone to call Balloonatics, a costume shop owned by her aunt, Ginger. Her aunt was out of town, so Tammy left 3 messages on the answering machine. Ginger later described her niece's voice as frightened and desperate. Those recordings were eventually lost. And with that, Tammy disappeared. She never came home. On July 11th, Linda reported her missing. Police faced an uphill battle. There was no evidence, no body, no witnesses, no signs of a struggle. At 18, Tammy was legally free to leave, and some friends suggested she might have run away after disagreements with her mother. Investigators initially treated it as a voluntary disappearance. Linda was furious. She insisted her daughter would never leave without a word. Naturally, suspicion fell on Keith Roberts, the last person to see her. But his story was partially corroborated by the phone calls Tammy made after he left. Police accepted his account and cleared him. As time passed, crucial evidence was lost. Tammy's dental records, her fingerprints, making future identification of remains nearly impossible. Then, the case took a bizarre twist. Detective Harold Lewis received 2 anonymous calls from a woman claiming Tammy was fine. In one, she said Tammy would contact her family when ready. In another, she claimed Tammy was pursuing her dream of becoming a nurse. Linda dismissed the claims. Tammy was terrified of blood and had never expressed interest in nursing. Investigators suspected either a cruel prank or deliberate misdirection. Weeks turned into months, months into years. The trail went cold. In the absence of evidence, theories multiplied. Linda believed Tammy had stumbled onto something criminal at the spring break wrap party, possibly linked to Florida's booming drug trade of the early 1980s. Massive amounts of cash were laundered through businesses, and Tammy's mention of money laundering seemed too precise to ignore. If she had witnessed a deal, or even a murder, threats against her could explain her year of terror. Her collapse at the police station and mental health center might have been the final straw for those watching her, prompting them to silence her before she talked. Her clean disappearance suggested a professional job, not a random crime. Other theories pointed to serial killers active in Florida at the time. Christopher Wilder, the beauty queen killer, targeted young models and pageant winners. Tammy fit his type exactly. Linda even filed a lawsuit against his estate. But Wilder's spree peaked in 1984 after Tammy's disappearance, and his sloppy methods didn't match the precision of Tammy's vanishing. Another possibility was John Crutchley, the vampire rapist, notorious for his sadistic crimes. But his brutality contrasted with the clean disappearance in Tammy's case. The idea that Tammy ran away collapsed under scrutiny. She had genuine plans to move to California. Why stage a disappearance after a year of panic? Suicide was also considered, but without a body, it seemed unlikely. Linda died in 1995 without ever knowing the truth. Until her final days, she believed her daughter was murdered by powerful criminals. Today, Tammy's sister Suzanne carries the torch, running social media pages and keeping her memory alive. The case remains unsolved. What is clear is that Tammy's fear was real. Her warnings were not the delusions of a troubled mind, but the cries of someone who knew she was being hunted. Her story is not a simple mystery. It is a tragedy of a promising young woman destroyed by forces larger than herself, silenced by secrets buried deep within crime and corruption. Tammy's disappearance didn't make national headlines at first. In the pre-internet 1980s, news traveled slowly, and police statements that she left willingly muted public concern. Many saw it as a family dispute, nothing more. But as details emerged, her Hollywood connections, her escalating paranoia, the strange party, the story shifted. Journalists interviewed Linda, who refused to accept the runaway narrative. Slowly, the press began portraying Tammy not as a rebellious teen, but as a victim of possible foul play. Had it not been for Linda's relentless fight and those early local reporters, Tammy's story might have been forgotten. Interest reignited with the rise of the internet and true crime communities. Forums like the Doe Network and the Charlie Project built detailed profiles of her case. Amateur sleuths worldwide debated theories, examining every detail. Tammy's story had all the elements: a beautiful young woman on the verge of fame, ties to Hollywood, a psychological descent, and a mystery with no resolution. Podcasts, YouTube channels, and articles continue to dissect her disappearance, ensuring her memory isn't erased. Her case raises haunting questions. Was her paranoia mental illness, or instinctive recognition of a real threat? Modern psychology shows prolonged fear can mimic psychiatric disorders. Perhaps doctors in 1983 mistook her rational terror for irrational anxiety. Her story also exposes Hollywood's dark underside, where dreams intertwine with crime, drugs, and danger. Tammy may not have been a victim of fame itself, but of the dangerous world orbiting around it. It is also a tragedy of misunderstanding. Tammy cried for help in every way she could, but her friends, doctors, and even police couldn't interpret her signals. She was trapped, aware of the monster in the room, yet powerless to convince others until it was too late. And at the heart of it all was a mother's love. Linda transformed from ambitious stage mom to relentless advocate, writing, speaking, filing lawsuits, and never ceasing her search. Her devotion became her life's mission, a love passed on to Suzanne, who continues the fight. The case of Tammy Lynn Leopard remains a scar on collective memory. More than a crime story, it is a reminder of how fragile life is, how fame's light casts dangerous shadows, and how even under the spotlight, one can vanish without a trace. As long as her name is remembered, there is hope that one day, someone will break their silence, and the truth of what happened to Tammy will finally come to light. A peculiar missing person case has hundreds of Central Oregonians worried and watching. Bend police are searching for Kaye Sawyer, and tonight Jennifer Weed spoke with Sawyer's parents. A year and a half after a young woman was killed in Bend, the man responsible admitted what he did. This morning, 32-year-old Edwin Lara pleaded guilty to aggravated murder in the death of 23-year-old Kaye Sawyer. Under the plea, he avoids a possible death sentence. Bend, a postcard pretty city along the Deschutes River in the heart of Central Oregon. In this quiet setting, Kaye Sawyer was building a hopeful life. The 23-year-old lived with her longtime boyfriend, Cameron. By day, she worked as a dental assistant at a local clinic. By night, she studied at Central Oregon Community College, pushing toward her goals. Kaye had an artist spirit. She loved photography, painting, and writing poetry, always trying to hold on to the beauty she noticed. She was also full of energy, into sports, snowboarding, golf, fishing, and paddleboarding. With snowy peaks and clear lakes nearby, Bend fit her personality perfectly. Although her parents divorced and remarried when she was young, Kaye never lacked love. She stayed close with both biological parents and her step-parents. She was a devoted big sister to her 4 brothers. Friends and family remember Kaye as sunshine on a cold day, always bright, always smiling, always able to make others feel at ease. Her mother once said, "To Kaye, everyone was a friend, even if it was just a stranger passing by." On the night of July 23, 2016, Kaye was getting ready for a night out, a bachelorette party for a close friend. She was about to leave her apartment to meet the group in downtown Bend. It was a familiar, lively area not far from her college, full of lights and movement. She parked at a friend's place and joined the group to begin the evening. Kaye and her friends visited several bustling bars, laughing, clinking glasses, soaking in the music, dancing, singing, playing games, and enjoying every part of the celebration. At some point, Kaye danced with a man at the bar. One of Cameron's friends, Cameron being her boyfriend, noticed and texted Cameron. Shortly after midnight, the party wound down. Kaye called Cameron and asked for a ride. While waiting, she texted his friend to apologize in case there was any misunderstanding. Soon after, Cameron arrived. An argument began between them and continued during the drive back to their apartment complex. When they got there, Cameron said he was too upset and needed a moment away. Kaye stayed in the car, crying, and told him she needed some space to calm down. 10 minutes later, Cameron returned to bring Kaye inside. It was late, and he hoped they could sleep and let it pass by morning. As he approached, he saw the passenger door open. Kaye was gone. Panicking, he texted her again and again. "Where are you, Kaye? Please come back to me. I don't want to play this game anymore. I'm out looking for you. Please help me." He kept trying. "Don't do this to me. I'm sorry for being upset when I picked you up. I just drove slowly down College Way, but didn't see you. Please come back." Kaye replied only once. "Are you kidding me? Goodbye." She then turned off her phone and never responded again. Cameron went to a friend's home, hoping Kaye had walked there. She hadn't. He drove the nearby streets, searching, but found nothing. Kaye's mother, Julie, and friends kept calling. No answer. At first, they tried to believe she was taking time to cool off. As the hours passed, that hope faded. Police were called. "Hi. I'm not sure if this is the right number to call. Last night, I came home from the bars with my girlfriend, and she got upset and ran off. I chased after her, but couldn't find her, and since then, I still haven't heard from her. Her phone's been off. I've called all our family members, but no one has heard from her either, so I'm wondering what you recommend I do." The dispatcher responded, saying they could put in a call and have officers or deputies search for her, then asked where she was last seen. The caller explained that it was on College Way, in their apartment complex. The dispatcher asked if it was in a specific apartment or the parking lot, and the caller clarified that it was around 1 in the morning. She was angry, so he went inside and told her to come in when she calmed down. When he returned 10 minutes later, she was gone. He called her several times, and she answered briefly, saying she was walking down the street and that her phone was about to die, but after that, he couldn't reach her again. The dispatcher asked if she had left on foot, and the caller confirmed. Then came a series of questions. Her last name, Sawyer. Her first name, Kaye, spelled Kyle. Whether she had her phone. The caller said she did the last time he saw her, but it had been dead all day, though he expected she would charge it. When asked about her carrier, he said Verizon. The dispatcher asked about a vehicle, and the caller explained that her car was still parked at her friend's house, and he had already spoken to that friend, who hadn't heard from her either. Finally, when asked if he had any idea where she might go, he admitted he didn't know, though he figured she might have gone where her car was, or maybe to her best friend's or her mom's. He had already been to both places, spoken to her dad as well, but no one had heard anything from her. "Yes, I need to have an officer contact me. My daughter is missing. She's over 23 years old, but she has epilepsy and other medical concerns. The dispatcher asked for her name. She replied, Julie Juli. The dispatcher assured her that the officer who had already spoken with Kaylee's boyfriend would be in touch soon. Julie thanked them, saying, "That would be awesome, thank you so much." The dispatcher responded with a polite goodbye, and the call ended. Kaylee's name quickly began spreading online. News of her disappearance rippled through the community, and soon hundreds of volunteers joined the search effort. Cameron was the first to be questioned, but his account matched up with the timeline and raised no red flags. Police ruled him out quickly. Investigators also interviewed the friends who had gone out with Kaylee that night, but none had any new information. Focus then shifted to the man she had danced with at the bar. Detectives wondered if he might be connected, but when questioned, he expressed genuine shock at her disappearance. He explained that they had only shared a brief dance before she returned to her group, and he never saw her again. Local coverage heightened the concern. I'm Alex Biston. An unusual missing person case has hundreds of Central Oregonians worried and searching. Bend police are working to find Kaye Sawyer, and tonight Jennifer Wade spoke with Sawyer's parents. Jen, how long has their daughter been missing? Jennifer reported that Kaye was last seen early Sunday morning near her West Bend apartment parking lot, walking toward the nearby Central Oregon Community College. Her mother described her as very close to her family, emphasizing that it was completely unlike her to vanish without contact for 2 days. Her family said they were desperate to have her back. Kaylee's 4 younger brothers wanted nothing more than their big sister home again. Flyers began appearing all over the region as thousands of people helped spread awareness on social media. Julie, her mother, recalled, "We just contacted everybody and said, please get her face out there." The campaign worked. Kaylee's name quickly flooded Facebook, and posts about her disappearance spread widely throughout Central Oregon. Volunteers poured into Bend to join the search. But Julie herself had a gnawing instinct from the very beginning. She later admitted, "I knew something bad had happened. My body told me she was gone." Investigators tracked Kaylee's phone, but the signals led only to an older iPhone that was still connected to her Apple account, not the phone she had been carrying. On Monday, Kaye failed to appear at the dental clinic where she worked, which deepened police concerns. Her case was immediately elevated, and her name was added to the Endangered Missing Persons Alert System. During this time, Officer Isabel Ponara, new to the Bend Police Department, walked into the briefing room with a personal revelation. Her husband, 31-year-old Edwin Lara, had been acting strangely since Sunday. Lara was a campus security officer at Central Oregon Community College, the same school Kaye attended. Isabel said he returned unusually late from his Saturday night shift. She explained, when he works a graveyard shift, he usually starts around 3 in the afternoon, but his hours change constantly. It's unpredictable, and I had gotten to the point where I didn't even know when he'd be working. Investigators asked her about Sunday. She recalled, "We went to church at 9 in the morning. He was so quiet on the way, very withdrawn. Normally he'd hold my hand, but he didn't. At church, he barely spoke. When they left, she asked him what was wrong, but he gave no clear answer." Isabel said, "We've been together a very long time, so I could tell something was off." She described how, after church, they saw a movie together. Still, his mood didn't improve. The next morning, Lara's behavior escalated. Isabel recounted, "He came out of the room with tears in his eyes. I asked what happened, and he just sat on the sofa. I turned off the TV, and then he told me, 'I killed a woman.' He said he hit her with a car. At first, I thought it was an accident, but then he kept saying, 'I panicked.' I couldn't understand what he meant. I asked what he did with the body, but his explanation made no sense." Lara admitted that some of Kaylee's belongings were hidden in their shed. Then he grabbed a gun and fled the house. Isabel said, "It wasn't making any sense, but when I saw her things, I thought, oh, God." She told officers that Lara claimed it had happened during his shift on Sunday morning, but he never gave a clear time. Acting quickly, investigators searched the shed at the couple's home. Inside, they found chilling evidence: Kaylee's wallet and ID, her shoes, a rock stained with blood, and a clump of hair. The evidence made one fact undeniable: Kaye had been murdered violently. But by then, Edwin Lara was already gone. After leaving his home, Lara drove to a shopping mall parking lot. There, a 19-year-old named Andrea had just finished a 12-hour shift and was sitting in her car preparing to leave. Lara suddenly opened her passenger door, pointed a gun, and ordered her to drive. He showed her a picture of himself in his security guard uniform and spoke about the news reports covering Kaye Sawyer's disappearance. 3 hours later, he forced Andrea to stop at a roadside motel. To avoid suspicion while checking in, he made her pretend to be his girlfriend. Once inside the room, he handcuffed her to the bathroom door handle while he took a shower. Later, he ordered her to shower in front of him. Andrea resisted, refusing firmly. When she wouldn't comply, Lara changed tactics. He gave her sleeping pills, forced her to swallow them, and then cuffed her to the bed. Just then, Andrea's phone alarm rang. Thinking quickly, she told Lara that she had an STD and the alarm was a reminder to take medication. Her only intention was to buy time, to make him hesitate, and to avoid being assaulted. The plan worked. At around 1:30 a.m., Lara decided to leave the motel. He ordered Andrea back into the car and told her to keep driving. They traveled until 5 a.m. when they stopped at a rest area. There, Lara tried to steal a car from a 73-year-old man. When the man resisted, Lara shot him in the stomach before fleeing. Thankfully, the man survived. Lara and Andrea then ran to a nearby gas station, where Lara carjacked another vehicle. This time, the victims were a 76-year-old woman and her 2 grandsons. Lara forced one of the teenagers to drive while keeping his gun aimed at them. After a short distance, he released all 3, then ordered Andrea to continue driving. He directed her to head straight for California, claiming he had family there. Throughout the journey, Lara kept control, talking, threatening, and never letting his guard down. At one point, Edwin used Andrea's phone to record a video of himself. He said, "Hi everybody. I just want to say that I apologize for everything I've done. Most likely I'm going to get caught and, sorry about that girl in Central Oregon. And I want to let family members, Andrea, that she's fine and she will be fine because, so far she's been doing, what I've been told. I just killed that other girl, you know, and I regret it. I regret killing her. Now she's kept breathing and not following her forever." He uploaded the video to Facebook with the caption "Outlaw Murderer." Lara also called his family, telling them what had happened. At 6:40 a.m., he phoned 911, identified himself, and admitted why police were after him. He said, "911 emergency reporting. Yes. Hi, this is Edwin Lara, and I'm the guy on Interstate 5 going at high speed. I know you guys have the chopper on me already. Yeah, and yeah, I just want to say I am going to turn myself in. So, you know, I am wanted for murder in the state of Oregon." The dispatcher asked, "Okay, Edwin, where are you at right now?" "I have no idea," Lara replied. "Are you by yourself, or?" "No, I have someone with me. I kidnapped her in Oregon. She's innocent. Her name is Andrea. I'll let her give her last name if you can call her family." The dispatcher asked, "Okay, just give me a second. Hello. Yeah. Hi. What's your name?" Andrea answered, "Andrea. What's your last name?" "Mays. M.E.S. "Okay. Are you hurt at all, Andrea?" "No. No. Okay. Do you know where you are?" "Let me talk to Edwin again." Back on the line, Lara made a request. "But I want to ask you a favor." "Uh-huh. So I have asthma." "You have asthma?" The dispatcher clarified. "Okay. Yeah. So, you tell him not to be too rough on me because I can barely breathe right now." The dispatcher responded, "Okay. The officer sees you. Are you able to safely stop?" Lara said, "Yeah, I can stop, but not right now. I just don't want to stop right here in the middle of the road. You know, putting myself in danger and putting everybody else in danger. More in danger, I guess. You know, they won't. They're aware. I'll let them know they won't. But if you can stop safely, they just don't want you to run. They think you're going to run or anything. Okay, Edward, do you have any weapons with you?" "Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I do have a gun on me. I am not going to flash the gun, so you tell them not to shoot me. I don't want to die." "Okay, you stick by your word. I'll let them know." "Yeah, I'm not. I'm going to let them know, you know. Don't hurt Andrea. She's a nice girl, you know. Don't hurt her. I'm actually calling my family just to say bye to them. So once I'm done calling my family, then I'll turn myself in." By now, the California Highway Patrol was already in pursuit. Lara's vehicle had been spotted speeding on the interstate, fleeing at over 100 miles per hour. Officers gave commands. "Guys, stop. Get your hands up. Get out of the vehicle. Step over to your right." Finally, After hours on the run, Edwin Lara's car was forced to a stop. Police surrounded him. Just before being taken into custody, he recorded one last video message on Andrea's phone. His voice shook as he said, "I know this is being recorded. I just want to say to Kaye's family, I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry for what I've done. Later, I'll tell them where her body is." Both Edwin and Andrea were taken into custody. At only 19 years old, Andrea was initially treated as a suspect. But once investigators confirmed she had been kidnapped, she was cleared of involvement and quickly released. During interrogation, detectives reminded Edwin, So Edwin, at this point in time, I do want to let you know that the room is being video recorded. It's also being audio recorded. Just for the sake of being official, today's date is the 26th of July, 2016. I have about 1,312 hours. I'm Detective James McLaughlin. Present with me is Detective Sergeant Eric Beckwith with the Redmond Police Department. Lara repeated the same story he had told Isabel, that he had hit Kaylee with his car accidentally. But this time, he added that when she screamed, he panicked and strangled her. Investigators quickly pointed out that his story didn't make sense. One detective explained, "Finding out stuff about you, with your family and those kinds of things, I know you have a heart that's probably pretty heavy and you want to tell us some stuff about the vehicle accident, and that's why we're here. Okay, we have not been able to find Kaylee's body. Can you please help me find her body immediately before we start talking about anything else? The reason why I'm asking you that is I've done this a bunch of times." Lara eventually admitted, "I want to tell you where the body is." The detective encouraged him, "Yeah, I do. And you know this man wants to do a map." During interrogation, detectives encouraged Edwin Lara to share his story, reassuring him that they wanted to hear the truth. They leaned on his religious beliefs, reminding him that ultimately he would answer to God. Gradually, Edwin opened up, first claiming he accidentally struck Kaye Sawyer with his patrol car, then admitted he panicked when she screamed and strangled her. Detectives challenged his version, pointing out that from the moment he took her phone and purse, he had already decided she would not leave alive. They pressed him to acknowledge his intent, and eventually, he admitted his decision was made when she began screaming after seeing his face. The reality, as pieced together by investigators, was chilling. After an argument with her boyfriend, 23-year-old Kaye Sawyer walked alone near the Central Oregon Community College campus. Driving a campus security SUV resembling a police car, Lara spotted her and turned around. With his uniform, badge, and patrol car, he appeared trustworthy. Believing she was being helped, Kaye entered the back seat, a door that locked from the inside. Once inside, Lara began making sexual advances. When she resisted, he strangled her unconscious and drove her to a remote location. There, he strangled her again, struck her with a rock, and raped her. Tragically, Kaye was still alive. Lara used another rock to end her life before abandoning her body. The possibility that Kaye may have still been alive when left behind haunts investigators to this day. After the murder, Lara tried to cover his tracks, switching vehicles, returning to the scene, and attempting to conceal her body. Police widened their search and examined the patrol car Edwin Lara drove the night of the crime. Inside, they found handwritten notes. One admitted he had struck Kaye Sawyer on College Way, while another expressed remorse for taking her life. Soon after, investigators located Kaye's body in a remote canyon area off Highway 126. What began as a missing person case now became a confirmed homicide. News reports quickly identified Lara, a 31-year-old campus security officer at Central Oregon Community College, as the prime suspect. His wife, Isabel, a Bend police officer, had already warned authorities about his suspicious behavior. Though Lara had confessed in detail during interrogation, he entered a plea of not guilty in court. Prosecutors sought the death penalty, but Lara's defense argued that his rights had been violated and his confession thrown out, forcing the state to rely on forensic evidence. Defense attorneys portrayed Lara as suffering from neurological impairment, but prosecutors dismissed that claim, calling him a psychopath and potential serial killer. Eventually, in January 2018, Lara changed his plea to guilty for aggravated murder and robbery in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. Sexual assault charges were not pursued, as Lara denied rape, and the district attorney, after consulting the Sawyer family, focused on securing life without parole. Kaye's family gave emotional statements, calling Laura a monster and expressing their grief and anger, wishing for harsher punishment. Ultimately, Laura received life in prison without parole, Oregon's maximum penalty, plus a second life sentence for kidnapping Andrea, the 19-year-old he held hostage. In court, Laura delivered a brief, remorseful statement asking for forgiveness, but Judge Michael Adler condemned his actions as cold and heartless, stressing that Laura was fortunate to avoid a death sentence. The judge acknowledged Andrea's bravery and the pain of Kaye's family, recognizing their letter to the court as one of the most difficult he had ever read. While justice was served with Lara's sentencing, the profound loss endured by Kaye's family could never truly be healed. After the case, Edwin Lara's wife, Isabel Ponara, who had been a police officer, resigned from the force and filed for divorce. In her resignation letter, she wrote that the decision was difficult but necessary for her own growth and inner peace after everything that had happened. Meanwhile, Kaye Sawyer's family filed a lawsuit against Central Oregon Community College, where Laura worked as a campus security officer. They argued that the college failed to conduct proper background checks and ignored warnings, including one from a female officer who had refused to ride with Laura because she felt unsafe. The lawsuit also highlighted how campus security vehicles and uniforms closely resembled those of actual police, complete with cages, lights, handcuffs, and body cameras, giving Laura the tools to impersonate law enforcement. In 2022, the college agreed to a $2 million settlement with the Sawyer family. Tragedy struck again a year later when Kaylee's mother's storage unit was broken into by John Vieira and Emily Pickett. They stole more than $30,000 worth of belongings, including a necklace holding some of Kaylee's ashes. John admitted to throwing it away, and it was never recovered. He was sentenced to 40 months in prison, while Emily received 10 days in jail. Out of these painful events, Kaylee's law was created. The law requires campus security vehicles to look clearly different from real police cars, bans the use of cages, and mandates GPS tracking and interior cameras in all vehicles. Security officers are now prohibited from conducting traffic stops or searches, and all applicants must undergo federal background checks and psychological evaluations before being hired. Kaylee's memory also lives on through KK Readers, a program named after her nickname. Her favorite book, Oh, The Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss, is now donated to kindergarten classrooms across Oregon, spreading her love of reading to children. Kaye Sawyer was just 23 years old when her life was stolen in a brutal, senseless act. Yet her legacy continues, reminding us of system failures that must be corrected, the strength of survivors, and a mother's love that never fades. As her mother Julie said, "The moment I first held her, I understood what love at first sight meant. She was it." Thank you for staying with us through this haunting story. If you'd like to support the channel and help us continue sharing emotional and important stories that deserve to be told, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support makes all the difference. We'll see you in the next story, because somewhere, another truth is waiting to be brought to light.